get into another question on your journey of excellence. How did you get into Standard University Press, lectured at Harvard Business Publishing, and also getting books awarded? I am sure my audience would love to hear this brilliant journey of excellence. Now, looking at your background, moving from that background, and finally reaching to the, Harvard Business.
Well, it's interesting. I don't have the recipe, and I've been lucky. Luck is important, right? But I think that in order to make luck, you have to have something to show for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that probably what made the difference was that I was true to myself. And so I was not doing the standard research that anybody does. So neither using the same methods, partly because I didn't have the money. I was researching in Brazil. And so what do? You work with what you have. I came across the Coyote and the Roadrunner, for example. And I realized by reading the life of Chuck Jones, the creator, that he had designed that cartoon in order for people to align themselves with the coyote, which is what Americans and English people do. And yet most Latin Americans, certainly most Indians, they side with the Roadrunner. And that was an eye-opener, right? Because there's no translation error. And so I used that in order to test allegiances amongst people. And I realized that to some extent, people learn how to be in their societies, how to operate and how to work through the stories that they read. And this is what came out in that book that got published at Stanford University Press. I was looking at Americans through their literature. And their literature, their iconic literature, always has goals that have to be attained. And there's usually one best path to get to it. That is from childhood stories like The Engine That Could, to Moby Dick, to films like Apocalypse Now, you name it. The Coyote and the Roadrunner, of course. But this is what makes Americans what they are, and what makes American management so adapted to their own mindset. This is what you have to do in order to get there.
Wow.
And yet, most of the literature in our countries, in Latin America, Spain and Portugal, is oriented for you to enjoy the journey together. Destination, the goal is not as important. So this is why we have a hard time fitting in to American management, because we're constantly pressured to attain a goal, even competing against our colleagues, when really what we want to do is enjoy life. Right? And be kind to each other. Now, fighting and competing against our colleagues is tantamount to treason amongst us. So if you want to treat our people in that way, exactly the same way as Americans, it doesn't work as well. It makes you unhappy, performance drops. So I think that book that published at Stanford picked up on that. And this is what led to Harvard Business Review to publish an article of mine on Coyote and the Roadrunner. Then somebody said, oh, this guy has something to say, let's listen. And it worked for some time. But then the editors change, A new one comes in. Yeah, a new one comes in and says, oh, enough of Alfredo, pick somebody else.
But it's an amazing journey, and I love your word, which you say, I have been true to myself.
Oh, yes, it's essential, really.
It's essential. The learning here is that we need to be true to ourselves. Whom are we cheating? Ourselves. Who
Oh,
is
yes.
ourselves? So
Yeah.
in COVID era, a lot of people have probably understood this.
Yes.
But then,
Just let me tell you a little anecdote of how business schools are. I was working in a business school in Brazil with a colleague, and in the library, I saw my Stanford book on a shelf. And I pointed out to him, hey, look, my book is there. He says, yeah, how did you manage? Do you know somebody there?
I love it.
And I said, no, guy. I could tell where that was coming from, sheer envy, right? So I told him, no, no, no. First, you have to write something interesting, and then you have to show it. But DK, not everybody will pick it up. It just depends on whether what you write about uh, hits somebody that has an idea. Oh, yes, right? So, for example, this book on Gaucho Dialogues that I wrote about leadership amongst Latin Americans, it made waves. It got an award in California,
Ah,
a land of immigrants,
yeah.
right? Yeah, because they're more sensitive to this plight of being myself in a foreign country.
Yeah.
This book for the childhood story, The Cow That Learned to Fly in order to get to Washington seeking greener pastures, which came out of a story that I would tell my children when they were very young to explain why I had gone to Washington to work for the World Bank. But that book then got an award also in California, a land of immigrants. And it
Yeah.
got published not in Brazil, but in Portugal, a land of emigrants. So you
Oh my
see, yeah,
God.
so sometimes, what happens is that being true to yourself, you have to show your piece and your work to your own tribe, so to speak, because there are several tribes around the world. Not everybody will be as accepting of what you have to say.
Oh, wow.
Hmm?
Wow. That's fascinating. You need to be looking at some of the tribes. Not
Yes.
every tribe will be fascinated by you. There are
No, no.
multiple tribes in the world.
Yeah.
So what? At least go to some tribes and you make an impact.
Yes.
Well, it's amusing and amazed the statement you are saying. And I love this statement today.